All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friday Night Prepper Pre-Party Show. We are live. We are glad to have you here. I hope your weekend is off to a good start. If not, we're going to get you off to a good start. I'm going to give people just a few minutes to get through the notifications and if anybody wants to watch ads or anything like that. While that's going on, if we have new people to the channel today, I'll tell you a little bit about my channel. So I talk about all things preparedness. We do a little bit of food self-sufficiency, gardening, foraging. We do some bushcraft, some wilderness survival, a little bit of everything here. And I am not a military or police sergeant. It is just a nickname. I just like to make sure I clarify that for anyone who's new to the channel. And I release videos twice a week. On Tuesdays, I try to do either a product review or a new skill or something along those lines. And on Friday nights at this time, usually 7:45, I try to go live. If I'm not able to go live, then I usually release something else pre-recorded. Hey, Wasatch Wizard, I see lots of people popping in. And let me start by go ahead and introducing my guest tonight. I am very, very proud and very, very happy that I was able to get Miss Cynthia from the Bigs Prep to come on my channel. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Sarge. How's it going?
I am having a great night so far.
Good.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Well, people are getting in here, so I will tell a little bit about Cynthia, and then I'm going to ask her to tell a little bit about herself. So she and I have been friends. I think we actually became friends on Instagram first before YouTube. But it turns out we actually have similar circle of friends, Van City Prepper and Apartment Prepper and a couple other people. So she messaged me, I think it was a couple weeks ago when I had maybe Van and Sassy and Apartment Prepper on, or it was one of those shows. And I said, you know what, we need to get you on the channel too. So thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on.
I'm excited to be here. This is awesome. And I'm in good company tonight. And I see a lot of cool people in the chat too that I recognize and some that I don't. So I'm really excited everybody's here.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about the Great Depression and lessons learned from the Great Depression tonight, how that can apply to stuff that's going on today, or maybe not. You know, situations change. If you have questions, it would help us out a lot if you can put them in all caps. We'll try to catch as many of those as we can. And if there's an issue with audio at all, like either we're echoing or anything like that, or it's not coming through clear, you know, just kind of shout it out so I know we can kind of see if we can troubleshoot it. So who's your little friend there, Cynthia?
This is Tater, and he is a rascal. He's almost 3 months old now, and he is a Yorkie Maltese cross, but he's mostly Yorkie.
Aww.
So he is going to be causing problems tonight. I can already tell.
He just wants to be famous.
YouTube famous. Exactly.
Exactly. So tell us, how did you get started in prepping?
Started with prepping. Okay. So in 2008, just a little bit of my recovery story as well. In 2008, I was addicted to prescription pain medication and also alcohol, very much so. And I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I left my entire life. I just literally shed everything, my current relationship, everything but my kids. And we ended up in a little tiny house in the middle of Florida in the national forest. And we had nothing. We were so poor. And trying to feed them and trying to make sure that everything was, you know, provided for them. I swore that I was never going to do that again. Never. And we are the great state of hurricanes here in Florida. So it started out with that. And then since I had already had a personal SHTF in my life, I decided that I wanted a huge pantry. And then I decided that I wanted 3 months of emergency, you know, expenses. Mm-hmm. And then it just grew and grew and grew from there. Mr. Biggs came on the scene in 2010. And I realized that if we had a personal SHTF, like he got hurt and wasn't able to work, or if, you know, we had something happen to us that we weren't able to get jobs or work or do whatever, that we would need some backup, some insurance. Yeah. So it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew until it's a massive prepper pantry that I have now.
That's awesome. And I love that you started with the prepper pantry and then financial preparedness, because that's what I tell everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'll get into some people conflict with me about the financial preparedness piece of it. We might talk about that a little bit, but that's what I tell people. You got to start with food and a way to purify water first.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you've got a couple months of that, you start thinking about, I got to pay down my debts. I gotta get some savings and stuff like that. So I love that. That's awesome. What about your content? Tell us a little bit about your channel and your Instagram and what you're doing.
So Instagram's a little edgier than some of my other content. Instagram, I tend to just kind of say whatever I want or whatever I'm thinking or whatever I can grab from the internet that is disturbing, maybe a little bit, like Wikipedia changing the definitions of words 43 times in 1 week. I won't say the word, but all kinds of different things over on Instagram that maybe I'm just kind of thinking about or whatever. And then here on YouTube, I do a lot of prepping content. I do a lot of food content. On my other channel, I have another channel called The Biggs Homestead Kitchen. I do a lot of prepper pantry recipes on that channel and how to use your preps and how to cook with your preps. And then on my channel, I do mostly like some current events. I do empty grocery store tours and, I show what they have and what they don't have, what the prices are. And I am keeping track of a Great Depression grocery list. That's what I'm calling it. It's about 30 to 35 staples like peanut butter, oatmeal, flour, bread, butter, things that normal people would buy, the basics, potatoes and onions and things that you would need to make a variety of recipes. And I've been keeping track of that since February of last year, just the different prices and how they're creeping up and how this packaging is actually shrinking.
Mm-hmm. Did I see that you're doing a live tomorrow about that kind of stuff?
Tomorrow, yeah. Okay. Tomorrow my live is 8% inflation is a lie.
Yep.
Yeah. And people have been contacting me and emailing me and messaging me on Instagram saying 8% inflation is a lie. My laundry soap went up 30%. My hamburger went up 50%. My, everything. So it's not 8%.
I agree. We were doing okay in my household. We weren't really even feeling it until like, I'd say April. And then all of a sudden we were like, whoa, what is going on? Our bank account's much lower than it was. And we had to backtrack, and it was all going to groceries, and it was gasoline and groceries is where all of our money was going. And so we had to rethink all that.
Peter Schiff said in a recent interview that the average family is using credit cards to finance the extra $150 to $200 per week that they're spending on food and gas. Oh. And then he asked the question, what happens when the credit runs out?
Oh, that's so sad and scary.
It's so sad and scary. And most people don't have, a savings or any kind of cushion.
Well, and not only that, I think people who are new to credit, like, I'm talking about people who are probably from like 18 to 25, and this is their, they're kind of getting their feet under them. They're trying to get their lives established and trying to get their careers going and things like that. For several years here, we had like basically zero interest credit. So it was free money. And from a financial standpoint, it can be okay to play with credit under those circumstances. When it's free money, you can make it work for you in good ways. But the interest rates have been going up, and they may not even realize that, where they were making dents in their payments.
Absolutely.
Now they're just paying towards interest, which is not good. That's
yeah, that's tough.
Robbie, good to see you. Looks like we got some people here. Crosshair, good to see you. Nate, Lavalian, Yucksters, Thorazine. I love that name. That's great. Good to see everybody. Wasatch Wizard, Michelle, Sierra. I know Kentucky was in here earlier. Van City popped in earlier. I know Van had some stuff going on tonight, so she may be kind of in and out if we catch her. Let me drop, before we go much further on this, I want to drop your link, and I did put it in the description, but I'm just going to drop it again here. That way people can pop over at any point. We'll drop it a couple times. So where do you see this all going for us in the next few months and beyond? I know it's just kind of speculation. Nobody has a crystal ball, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so high octane speculation on a lot of people's parts, but some pretty big heavy hitters like Martin Armstrong, Peter Schiff, they're all pointing to a fall dip or collapse or whatever you want to call it, a fall depression, recession. I don't think that you can deny the fact that come fall, when people have to fill up north, when they have to fill up their oil tanks, that there's going to be a big crunch for people getting heat this winter. Yeah. And it's going to be really hard on the average American family, even if they still have work and still have a job and still have all the things. It's just going to be really, really tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I'm worried about. The goal is clearly to reduce spending. Okay. That's so for people who don't understand economic policy, I'm just going to keep it really, really simple. How we got into inflation is spending, stimulus. We just pumped so much money into the economy that there was just floods and floods of money going into the stock market, into businesses. Businesses are hiring like crazy. And now the only solution appears to be to try to get people to reduce spending. Well, that sounds good. The consequence of that is going to be that businesses will eventually start cutting off the floodgates too. Hiring will go down. If it stops there, we're going to be okay. If hiring is reduced and expansion is reduced. If it doesn't, and it's like trying to balance on the head of a needle. If it doesn't, then it'll go into layoffs, and that's not good. Actually, let's start with this. I pulled this up earlier, and this can lead us into our discussion. So the 7 causes of the Great Depression. Okay, and I just want you to think about. I'm going to read this. I want you to think about stuff. This is for everybody. Think about stuff that's going on right now. Okay. Speculative boom in stocks in the 1920s. So we had the Roaring 20s. Money was flowing pretty good, right? And people were blowing money into the stock market at that point. Sounds familiar, right? We pumped and pumped and pumped. We've seen several of these booms and busts just in the last 20 years. We had the dot-com boost, the dot-com boom and bust. We had real estate boom and bust, crypto boom and bust.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Yep. So that was one of the factors in the 1920s. Stock market crash of 1929 was maybe not. I mean, that's what people associate it with. That's probably the marking event, but it wasn't so much what caused it. It was just like the firestorm that made it public for everybody. So we've seen a pretty bad crash this year, and now it seems to be kind of stabilizing. But what's going to happen in the fall when this, as spending in theory decreases, how will that affect the overall stock market is something I think people should watch for. If the floor drops down again and it drops further than it did this time, that would make me personally a little bit worried. Oversupply and overproduction problems. Okay, so we don't really so much have the oversupply issue. We don't really so much have the overproduction issue, and we do probably in some areas. I mean, I've heard stories. I know there's some channels talking about that allegedly Walmart has like warehouses full of stuff. They don't have enough people to get it out on the shelves, which is why if you go into a lot of Walmart, you're seeing empty shelves. I don't know. I don't work for Walmart, but I've heard that from people who claim that they have good knowledge on that. Maybe Survival Preparedness for Beginners, if people don't know that channel. He's been covering this topic a lot. Low demand, high unemployment. Okay, so we have neither of those factors right now. That's something, though, that they're pushing for lower demand. And what I said just a minute ago was that if that unemployment, if they start knocking people off the payroll, that would be like we're moving past recession into depression. Missteps by the Federal Reserve. I'll just leave that one there. Okay. Constrained presidential response. I'll just leave that one there. And an ill-timed tariff. Now, we don't have an ill-timed tariff, but what we do have is some global issues affecting the supply chain on some things like chips that we need for all of our electronic stuff, and wheat. Now, they're trying to solve the wheat import problem, and they're trying to solve the chip issue. how fast they can do that will be a factor. So out of those 7 steps that caused the Great Depression, we've hit like 2 of them, and there's 3 that are potentially right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So just stuff that I think people should be aware of. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not saying we get there. I hope we don't, but that's why we talk about this stuff. That's why we prepare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody got any questions yet? Winter is coming. Yeah, we've heard that before. Right. Too many dollars chasing too few goods.
Yeah, velocity of money is slowing, and that's not a good thing when you have a society like ours.
Yep. Love Rules, good to see you. Checking in from Japan. Appreciate that. All right, Robbie says, classic definition of inflation and inventory overload pushes the scale to recession. Yeah, it's tough to keep that balance, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
No, correction wouldn't be bad, and that's what they're hoping, is that this is just a correction. But as Cynthia said, the definition of a certain word keeps changing day by day. So take that with however you want to take it. Grocery outlet these days. Not there, yeah. So I the empty shelves thing. What I notice in my city is that Maccabee is good to see you. What I notice in my city is that Walmart has had some issues, but most of my other stores, there'll be like certain things missing, but not. There's always food. Like there was a couple months where I couldn't get the granola bars that I liked, but I could get granola bars. I just couldn't get the ones that I liked.
Right.
What are you seeing?
So I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing certain products just kind of disappear. And then for like 3 or 4 months, and then pow, they're back, but the prices increase and the box has shrunk. So that's my big thing. And I read that that is because the contract has ended. So eggs, if Walmart has a contract for eggs at $2.39 a dozen, that's how much they have to sell them for until the contract is over. And then you won't see them for a while. And then all of a sudden you'll see them because they've renegotiated their contract to factor in diesel increases or employee shortages or whatever it is to get the product on the shelf for you. The price is up.
Okay. Bacon has a question here. What comfort items are you stacking up on, and which do you recommend? I'm mostly tapped up on booze, so I'm good there. I do. I know some people don't drink, and that's okay. I'm not a big drinker, but I keep some in the house. I like to have it around. Back in my 20s, I did. I drank a lot more in my 20s, and I lost the taste for it. So I'll have a bourbon or whatever once in a while. My wife likes some wine. We kind of keep it in the house, and it's like to have it. But what comfort items are you recommending?
Chocolate and candy. I have a whole video where I just put candy in quart jars and sealed it. It's so good. So the sugar is my main deal. I don't drink alcohol at all, and I haven't in 14 years, but that's just a recovery thing for me. But sugar all the way. Like right here, I have a little pile of M&Ms next to me, just in case I get nervous. I can just snack on one real quick.
I'm gonna make you feel better right now. You ready?
Hey,
there we go. That's
one of my guilty, for the win.
That's one of my guilty pleasures. And yes, I know that there's nothing healthy in there for me.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Not everything has to be healthy. Another comfort item I have is shelf-stable little creamers for my coffee. I don't know why that makes me feel ridiculously happy, but somehow it does. So I have a couple packages of those. Decaf coffee. I don't do caffeine either. I don't know. I just have a bunch of random hot cocoa mixes. We have a few like cans of soda. We don't really drink soda that often, but it would be nice to have, if you are sick of eating rice or something. I don't know.
All of that is good comfort stuff. And we stack some snacks. We like Cheez-Its, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I do like my junk food. I love my coffee. I love my coffee. and my wife is a baker, so
nice.
yeah. So whenever there's a big storm coming, we kind of like she'll bake ahead, so we get tons of junk food in the house and stuff. Because you will, when you're going through stuff like that too, you get stressed. Hurricanes, right?
I know.
And the big joke is like everybody buys a ton of snacks before hurricane, and then they eat it before the hurricane because you get so stressed out and you're just craving it.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. B's favorite part about hurricanes is I make a double batch of gluten-free chocolate chip cookies every single time because they are kind of good outside the refrigerator, and we just eat chocolate chip cookies for the whole hurricane.
Mm-hmm. Bacon has a follow-up. A lot of people overlook the moral passive, which can be a maker. Yeah, absolutely. Games are another. Yep. I keep some comic books that I've never read. I just kind of have them back in case. And some other books too. I've got some war books, some nonfiction, stuff like that. Just powers out for a while. I mean, most of the time my entertainment is coming from hiking or gardening. But if I'm stuck inside and I can't watch TV or play video games, you want to have some other options too. So
absolutely, yeah.
Board games are good. But the Hershey shortage. Don't you say that.
Too.
Don't you dare say that.
Be still my heart.
Yeah. And Vanessa Kitty likes her MREs. I love that. It's time for me to order some MREs. All right, so let's go into lessons we've learned from the Great Depression. So my grandmother was a little girl. She's passed away now. She's in heaven. But she was a little girl during the Great Depression, and so she was old enough to remember some stuff, and she told me stories. What about you? Did you learn from like a family member or?
Absolutely, yes. So in the 80s, we lived in rural West Virginia, and our landlady basically took me right under her wing, and she was a mountain woman, and I loved her. Her name was Kathleen. And she used to tell us stories about the Depression all the time. And then my grandmother came to visit us once a year in West Virginia, and she and my grandmother would sit on the porch and hull strawberries and talk about the Depression all the time. And I would just sit there and eat it up.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of worry that if we hit something like that again, there's some problems with when I say our generation, I'm not picking on like Gen Y. I know. I mean all of us. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm not picking on any generation. I'm saying all of us. We don't have the same resiliency that the previous generations had, and we've lost a lot of the skills that they had. I know in prepping, we try to preserve some of that, but I'm sure that even with all the homesteading efforts and everything else, there's still stuff that's probably been lost. So what are some things that come to mind that either you were taught about or you read about that people could be working on now to build up that kind of resiliency and, just those skills in case we hit that kind of situation again?
So one thing that my grandmother and Miss Kathleen always used to talk about was skills. And the more skills you had, the better off you were. Women and men and children would do anything at all to get money or trade. A lot of bartering happened. If you had extra vegetables or eggs, you could trade that out for somebody to fix your fence or, do anything. Women cut hair. They made meals for men who didn't have wives, gathered firewood, anything and everything to do. And the more skills you had, the better off you were going to be. So I read a book once that said the man who can make lanterns will never be alone, because he knows he knows how to make lanterns and get light for people.
Right.
That's a really good skill.
Valued skills, things like home repair, right, and things like that are huge. Not only can you save yourself a ton of money, but there's going to be people around you that don't know how to do that stuff, and you can either trade that for something else or help them out, or you can charge for it. So absolutely, and as long as people are able to drive and have vehicles too, auto repair, things like that too. Like I can change my oil. I can change a tire. That's about the extent of what I could do with a vehicle at this point,
Yeah. So everyone was expected to work, even the children. My grandmother was responsible for taking care of her two younger siblings and running the house, while my great grandmother did laundry for people. That was her thing. And she mended and made clothes and she was like a seamstress. And she also taught piano lessons, which I don't know how much in the Depression you need to learn how to play the piano. But I remember my great grandmother still having her piano in her house. And so children foraged. They were responsible for caring for their younger siblings. They were responsible for most of the weeding in the garden. They were also responsible for, my grandmother was responsible for catching small mice and other little rodenty things. They would kill them and feed them to the chickens.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was quite a thing. Mrs. Sisler said that the children used to go, because the train ran right through the town, the children would go and throw snow or rocks at the train, and the men on the train would chuck coal at the kids trying to hit them. And then at the end, they would pick up all the coal and bring it home and burn it in the fireplace for the rest of the day, like in the coal stove. Yeah. So that was a big thing. Like I said, doing the fireworks, and then children did whatever jobs were necessary. And they still went to school and they still did all the things that children are supposed to do, but they worked hard. They were expected to contribute.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you talked about the coal, that was one of the stories my grandmother would tell too. Mm-hmm. They went through it in Boston. So they were in the city, and she said when the train would come through, one of her jobs was to go collect coal that fell off the train. Mm-hmm. And she said sometimes there was, because you remember, the train workers, that wasn't their coal. They're just delivering it. They would intentionally stop the train in certain neighborhoods and kick a little bit off for the people living there. So there was a sense of community too. Absolutely. That I don't know that we have that now. Maybe it would come back in a crisis, but I worry about that. In America, we're much more violent than we were in the 1920s.
Absolutely.
And I think people are much more likely to see violence as a solution to a problem than they would have been in the 1920s and 1930s. So that's a concern, that how things would be different if we hit another Great Depression. I think you had, not that there wasn't crime, there definitely was crime.
There was crime.
There was definitely crime, but I think it would be worse now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so many people lost their homes during the Great Depression because all the banks closed. They weren't able to pay their taxes or make any sort of mortgage payments. So they just lost their houses and formed these big convoys of trucks and cars and tent cities following around for work. So basically most people became migrant workers, or wherever they could find work, they would stay for a while and then keep going. And that made a sense of camaraderie, and they looked out for each other. But I don't really know how much of that would happen today, to be honest. Yeah.
One of the things, I grew up in the 1970s, and one of the things I remember, and you don't really see this anymore, that was probably the last decade for it, was clothing repair. I mean, some people still do it. Homesteaders still do it, but it was very, very common still in the 1970s, and now many people don't do that at all. So if you got a rip in your jeans, although there's some people like the rips in the jeans, but if you got a rip in your jeans or something, you would sew a patch on.
Absolutely.
And clothing, like if you had, like, say, this shirt didn't fit me anymore, well, I might still save it because I could still use this for a lot of different things. I could use it for cleaning rags. I could use it to make patches for clothes and stuff like that.
You can cut the buttons off of it. I have a whole big jar of buttons like my grandmother had, because every piece of clothing, I'm like, before that hits the rag bag, I want the buttons.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So my grandmother, growing up in the city during the Great Depression, I think, one of the things that they did not have access to, like, anywhere, not even a balcony that they could do gardening or anything like that. So they were a little bit more dependent on imports. And so there was a lot of soup kitchens. There was a lot of, and one of the things she told me was that you didn't know necessarily when it was going to happen. So you had to be ready. And so she was walking to school one day, and there was, all of a sudden, she saw people getting in a line, and she was like, what's going on? And they were giving out bags of flour and bags of sugar.
Ooh.
And so she was like, I'm not going to school today. I'm getting a bag of flour and a bag of sugar from my mom. And she
Mm-hmm.
did. And so I think it's very, very, the city experience would be very different than the country experience. I think anyone who has access to any kind of growing space should, if you're a prepper, you should be thinking about trying to learn that and not learning it like when SHTF happens. You got to you have to learn it in advance because there's a big learning curve to it.
I'm still learning. We've
Me
been
too.
on our land. We have the tiny house, and now we have the house next door, and we're still learning where things grow the best. And we've been here since Mr. B's been on the scene since 2008. We're still trying to figure it out.
Humans do adapt fast. I agree with that. Where did I see that? Yeah, so Bacon says humans can adapt fast. Yeah, that's probably what distinguishes us from all other species on the planet. That's not to say that, like you said, a lot of people could be suffering in the beginning.
People are going to be hungry, 100%. And then once they're hungry for long enough, they'll figure it out that they need to get to work.
Good to see you, T2. And you mentioned traveling for work. That was a big thing during the Great Depression. You went where the work was.
Yeah.
And sometimes that meant families got separated.
Absolutely. That must have been heartbreaking for parents to leave their children and things like that. We're very far removed from that kind of hardship right now in our society. Yeah.
I agree. How about depression fed mutation? Is that for real? Is that true?
Yeah. So one thing that I did want to talk about was my grandmother. Of course, they were in Maine. They were in Eagle Lake, Maine, which is way up by the top of the border by Canada.
Okay.
The Depression lasted approximately 10 years for them. And she always said about coats, blankets, shoes. Shoes were very hard to come by in the Depression. And they had 3 children. And she said it was always about shoes and coats. My great grandmother would make them mittens and, like scarves and things like that. But it really got me thinking, like, what would my coat look like after 10 years of wearing it if I couldn't replace it? Do I have a coat that's going to last me for 10 years? Or what about my boots or my shoes, my gloves? Like in Florida, we don't get that cold. It's not that bad. But up north, man, I'm from Maine, and it is cold.
You have to have good shoes up there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So putting away an extra coat, an extra blanket, an extra, pair of boots or whatever, especially if you have growing kids, that's really important because the original Depression was not a short event. No. It was many years.
10 years. Yeah. New food order. I'm sorry. I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were saying that people were choosing to wear food sack dresses now. Not that. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. That's why I giggled. I believe you. I believe you that it did happen. Absolutely. The shoe thing too is like, think about, there's really all that profession too, because that was a profession up until the 70s too of shoe repair.
Absolutely.
It doesn't even exist anymore. There's like probably less than, it's probably less than 500 people in the country that do that now.
Yeah.
It's just throw it away and replace it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like a cobbler was a really respected person. Like people valued shoes. Now I have 25 pairs of shoes. I can wear whatever pair of shoes I want. But I know. Yeah. But would they last me for 10 years? No.
Right. And up until the 40s, a lot of people, the kids would go to school. If it wasn't like Maine, like you said, or Massachusetts, New York, kids would go to school barefoot, and that was normal.
Yeah. Well, who could afford? Well, they used to have way more children back then, and who could afford shoes for 13 kids or something when only the father worked?
Exactly. And also that made me think about in the winter times too. If heating and energy became a massive issue, people would have to double up a little bit more, right? So a lot of people are fortunate that I grew up, I had my own bedroom. I didn't realize how fortunate that was, but it was pretty awesome. I had my own bedroom. Like But think about if it was the wintertime now, and I didn't have any heat, I probably would have wanted a dog in there at least,
Right.
if not a brother, or somebody that you could get a little bit of body heat off of. And it probably sounds weird to people now, but it wasn't weird that long ago.
No. So during the 70s, we had the oil crisis, and we were living in Maine. My parents were my adopted father and my mother were newlyweds, and I had a brand new baby brother, and we were very poor. And my dad was going to school. We had a sleeping bag, like a heavy winter sleeping bag, outdoor camping. It went inside the covers of my bed, and I had the upstairs bedroom with the wood stove chimney open. And my brother slept in the sleeping bag with me, and we had hats on because it was 60, 55, 60 degrees in the house.
Yep.
And that was, and a lot of nights we slept in front of the wood stove, me and my little brother, in the sleeping bag in front of the wood stove because
just trying to stay warm. Yeah.
And my parents did the best they could, but my mom baked all of our bread and made all my clothes and did all of everything because we were very poor.
Yeah. I bet it was the best bread, though.
It was the best bread, and we cooked most of our meals on the wood stove because turning the electric stove on made the light bill go up. Yeah.
And that kind of goes on to one of those other things too, is like being efficient with how you use everything, right? That's kind of another thing that we've lost. Like, I just did a load of laundry earlier tonight with like 5 items. Ooh. Like, how irresponsible would that have been?
No,
you couldn't do that.
Yeah, that was beyond frugal living. They really had to save everything and think of a new use for something that other people might throw away. Like, oh, that tin can, let me just use that for something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, instead of chucking it in the recycling.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wrote a note on, now I don't remember my grandmother ever talking about this, but I know they wouldn't have gone to the doctors because they wouldn't have been able to afford that. So I work with, I'm a therapist, Cynthia, and I work with first responders. That's my primary population right now. So a lot of the EMTs will tell me stuff like people will take an ambulance to the emergency room for a headache.
What?
Yes. Stuff like that. It just blows my mind that that kind of stuff happens, or they have like a cut on their finger and they'll take an ambulance to the emergency room. Like, I'm not talking about stitches. I'm talking
just
about like
a cut.
Needs a Band-Aid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So some basic medical care everybody should have. Right? You should, to the best that we can afford to, stock some stuff in your medical pantry too. We always keep aspirin on hand because that can bring down a fever. We always keep Imodium on hand because that stops diarrhea.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but that's actually one of the number one killers in the world is dehydration through diarrhea. It killed, not so much a problem in the United States. It doesn't happen as often here because we have pretty good, clean drinking water. But other parts of the world, that's a big issue.
That's a big issue.
Killer.
Yep. Absolutely.
We always keep Benadryl on hand for allergic reactions, right? So a little bit, some antibiotic cream, and of course you can get the Jace Medical stuff, which everybody's been talking about that. Some antibiotics, having a good medical kit with some Band-Aids, some bandages. I'll be honest with you, if I was out of work, didn't have insurance, and I cut myself, and it was a small thing that could be, I would let my wife stitch me up. I trust her to do it. She knows enough about that stuff to do it.
We call that kitchen table surgery.
Exactly. Yeah. Under right circumstances. Now, right now, I have a job and I have good insurance. I would go and get it done, at urgent care or something like that. But under the right circumstances, sure. Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah.
And people did, and people have.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they didn't have antibiotics then either.
Right.
So it was tough stuff.
Let's see if we got any questions here. We have a great sense of humor. Thank you so much. New food order. Where are you from? The same round, all conceiving more. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think my parents did that. I don't think they did that.
If you ever go on like one of those tours of like pioneer villages and stuff like that, true.
Yeah.
There was, yeah, babies were being made in the same room. Yep. Yeah. Today is a good day because my channel made history. Food review using now. We did a food review from the intestines of a food reviewer. Okay. I'm going to have to check that out. Okay. Bread bags. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, I like this comment. My mom would save the bread bags, put an item
Yes.
in it, and then put that one. Okay, so growing up in Maine, you would save the bread bags to put over your feet before you put them in your snow boots.
Yes. Same in Massachusetts. Yes. We did
Yeah.
that. Yep. That
And
was
then
how
put
you
your
waterproof
socks
your
on
shoes.
over.
Yeah.
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 Sock, bread bag, sock, boot.
I have, nobody does this stuff anymore. Not since like the late 70s is when a lot of this stuff really seemed to die out.
Yeah, poor Gen X, man. Be like, oh, your feet are getting wet. Just put them in a bread bag. You'll be all right. Go back outside.
Germs out of your bodies are even better. Make yourself harder to kill. Yep. Absolutely. All right, let me see. I wrote down a couple other ones. So learning some basic medical care so that you can avoid those doctor bills is a good one. That's a good homesteading skill, regardless of recession or depression anyways. We talked a little bit about the entertainment thing. Now, on my last stream, I talked about I had just went to a training about dopamine and how we since the internet we really turned on the unlimited access to whatever you want. Yep. Whatever you want, good stuff, bad stuff, whatever.
Cat videos,
right? So maybe your thing is like, I love cat videos. I love memes.
Yeah.
I could scroll through memes all day long. Now, the big difference is prior to the internet, yeah, you could still find all the stuff you liked, but you had to work for it a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And so now it's just like it's on tap. It's a couple clicks of a button, and you get exactly what you want. And so our brains are getting this massive amounts of dopamine, and the consequence of that is that it's really not balanced. We're not supposed to be happy all the time. I know that sounds weird, but we weren't wired to feel happy all the time. Our brains are meant to feel a little bit of distress and happiness. So when we've turned the faucet too much in one direction, and then we get a little bit of distress, we're losing the ability to cope with that. We're losing that resiliency to it. So if we turn off, and you see this now when there's a power outage, people flip out. If you get on your social media and like people are like, Starbucks is closed. What am I going to do? I don't know. Do you have, a thing to make it at home? Do you have some tea bags at least? Nope.
Nope.
I can't play my PlayStation, so we need to be aware of that too. I'm not saying the internet's bad. Of course, we're content creators, right? So I'm not saying the internet's bad, but we need to be aware of that and balance it out with a little bit of, this is what the professor was, a Stanford University psychiatrist. And she was saying, you need to balance that out with a little bit of distress and a little bit of pain and a little bit of suffering. And how do you do that in a way that's healthy? So you exercise, you go outside and you sweat in the sun a little bit, and you cook your food instead of always doing takeout.
Right.
You walk instead of always taking your car, to places that you could walk to. So we're just building up a little bit more of that everything's not always so easy. And it's actually good for our brain to have to work for some stuff. And then we appreciate the dopamine even more because there's that balance, right? Mm-hmm. So with regards to the Great Depression, they had entertainment. People entertained each other. People, they would do stories and things like that. And, now we certainly could have board games in the house like we talked about, and books, have your own little library to read. And you can do stuff outside when the weather's nice, and you can still tell stories and play parlor games. Like parlor games are kind of dead,
right.
What kind of games did you play in your neighborhood growing up?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so being part Native American, I was always the Indian princess and everyone else was the cowboys, and they would kidnap me and they would it was not PC, okay? We used to play hide and seek and kick the can and stickball, and if you had a ball, you were like the kid. We all had bikes. We all used to ride around our neighborhood and like this big gang of kids. And we looked out for each other. And that's another thing, is that kids don't solve their own problems now. If there was a fight between two kids, we solved it between ourselves, because if we didn't and we got the moms involved, no, you better solve that crap before you come home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not learning those kind of coping skills now.
They're not. Yeah.
No.
And I mean, I think the other side of that is, just to play devil's advocate on that, I don't think there's fair fighting anymore either.
Right.
I got into a lot of fights as a kid, and I can say that every time we fought with, whether it's schoolmates or neighborhood, other boys in the neighborhood or whatever, it was fists, and you fought. Sometimes you got a bruise, but you walked away from it.
Right.
And most of the time I became friends with those people afterwards. We resolved our conflict and it was done. I don't know that that's the same now, unfortunately.
No, everybody gets on social media now and starts just this horrible social media murder, basically. Yeah.
Scrolling back here a little bit. Let's see.
Hi, Sierra.
Cold War Prepper, I saw you popping in. Sierra, thank you so much.
Oh, Scrabble. We used to play Scrabble all the time. And checkers. Because my parents did not believe in television for children. So we got Sesame Street, and that was about it. We did not watch TV probably until I was in 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah, that's good. You learned imaginative play.
Yep. Books. I read a lot.
Saving aluminum foil. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that. Libraries would become very important. I agree.
Yeah, I've read several post-apocalyptic books where the librarian becomes the hero of the town.
I love that.
Because she holds all the old knowledge, and suddenly people flock to the library, and she became like the town hero.
I love that.
Yeah, it was a great book. I can't remember which one it was, but I was like, yes.
A good book about the Great Depression was No Promises in the Wind. I would recommend that one. It's about two brothers that are kind of traveling around the country during the Great Depression.
I was literally obsessed with Steinbeck when I was in high school. Like, I read his entire library of books, and there's a ton of great details about the Depression in his books. They're kind of macabre, but you know.
Yeah, they always
it was a high school thing.
A little bit of dysthymia to it, yeah.
Yeah. We had Nirvana and Steinbeck.
Yeah, Of Mice and Men is actually one of my favorite books.
Oh, yeah. East of Eden, that's my fave.
I still have a junk drawer, Bacon. I always will have a junk drawer. Yes, in my my post-apocalyptic career is going to be a black market trader in memes. Absolutely. All right. I think I'm mostly, if I missed your comment, you just shoot it out again. If there's any questions I missed or anything like that, go ahead and shoot it out again. So a couple more things. Squirrels. So I wrote down squirrels actually a lot of people don't know this, on the East Coast, east of the Mississippi, squirrels almost became extinct during the Great Depression because they were a very easy food source. And basically what people were doing was they would nail rat traps to a tree and put a little bit of bait on there. Now, I do think hunting, fishing, foraging are very important skills, and that people should learn that stuff as part of being a prepper or a homesteader. But I think I hear a lot of people say, well, I'll go kill a deer or whatever. If it's a Great Depression, you and everybody else within a 50-mile radius is going to be doing that. And the food source is going to go down really, really fast. That's why I like to advocate and teach foraging, because not many people know. They'll walk right by a plant and not know if it's edible or not. Now, granted, you have to eat a lot more of that stuff. It's not as calorie dense, but at least it gives you some vitamins and some diversity and that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
It's good to know both.
Yeah. And if you've never hunted before, deer just don't come up and go, hey, could you shoot me, please? I would like to give you dinner. They do not do that. Their evolution has come to the point where they don't want you to kill them.
Absolutely. They get smarter at the end of hunting season, don't they?
Yeah. So, and if you've never broken down an animal, if you've never hung an animal and broke it down, I mean, we have, it's quite an endeavor. It really takes a lot out of you to break down an animal like that.
Yeah, it's something I'm honestly not good at, the psychology piece of it. And when I had my farm in Kentucky, Had to do some of that, had to take care of some predators that were killing my chickens and stuff like that. I never really got past it hurt me inside every time. I'm not good at that part of it. So I would have to adapt to that pretty darn quick. But yeah, I did some of that while I was in Kentucky, and it never got to the point where like I was desensitized to it. Deborah Moore. Do you know that name for an author?
No, Deborah Moore. Are you fussy?
Bacon, I agree with that. That we've lost respect for people, and that it's too easy to do that with the internet now. It's too easy to run your mouth at somebody, or from the safety of a keyboard, and say things that you wouldn't dare to say to somebody face to face.
Or they just come up to you and start talking like they know you. Like, ew. Like the social constraint of making a rude comment to someone is completely gone. Like, why would you wear that? Like, oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Do I know you? No.
Yeah. I was raised, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Couple questions here. I think, let's see. Okay. You are a person of mystery, New Food Order. I am definitely going to have to go to your channel and check you out now. And there's a question here for you, Cynthia.
Oh, okay. Yes. So being gluten-free is very expensive. The best thing that you can do is just go grain-free, go paleo, meat and vegetables. All this gluten-free stuff really is kind of junk food. Sorry, it is. And I only eat about one gluten-free item a week. Mr. B consumes way more gluten-free stuff than I do. Rice is still gluten-free, but you're right. Gluten-free is so expensive. I just don't bother with a lot of it for myself. I do it for him. And then I just mostly eat fruits, vegetables, and meat. Yeah, mostly, honestly, vegetables, and meat is the guest star. I'll tell you about the August Prepper Pantry Challenge.
What's that?
So Homestead Engineering is asking about the August Prepper Pantry Challenge. Every day in August, I'm challenging myself to do something to move the needle forward on my prepper pantry. If it's vacuum sealing, if it's a haul, if it's checking out coupons or doing whatever it is, I'm going to be doing it. Even if it's just putting rice in the freezer to freeze for a few days before I vacuum seal it. Like, I just have to do something every single day in August. It's a short month to move the needle forward on my prepper pantry. Usually in August, I do a prepper pantry challenge where I eat only out of my prepper pantry and I don't buy any groceries.
Yep.
But this year, I don't think that's a wise thing to do. So we're still eating out of our pantry, which we always do, but I'm making a point every single day to put something away or do something to make my prepper pantry better.
It's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I actually have to do a haul and restock. I recently gave away a couple weeks worth of groceries to somebody who needed it more than I did, which to me, that's part of prepping. That's part of why we do
absolutely.
it. Is the there, for lack of a better term, there's a ministry to it too, you know. And,
absolutely.
And so I was happy to do that, but now I need to restock.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple questions there about wild hogs. I've never actually seen a hog in the wild. I know they're out there, and it would probably terrify me because they can get aggressive. Have you seen one?
Oh, absolutely. We hunt them all the time, and we eat them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The females taste better than the males. I'll tell you that right now.
How can you tell them apart in the wild?
Well, they have parts that show really, really big.
From the back, you can tell.
From the back, yeah. And most of the time, females that are of breeding age have, very visible nursing apparatus. I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube, but yeah, you can tell from a distance. So yeah, we hunt them, we bring them home, butcher them, and eat them. Can them. They're real good canned.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know your country when you go to eat your lunch and you're picking buckshot out of your teeth.
Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names will never hurt. It's not true. I find names to be hurt. They can be. Yeah, they can be. You're right. I'm sorry, Cold War Prepper. I may not have greeted you when you came in. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate you. Yeah. All right, I think I'm caught up on comments here. Let me see if I had anything else that I had taken notes on. Any other thoughts about the Great Depression that we could potentially use to? Oh, I was going to talk about the gold confiscation too, real quick. But any other thoughts that you have?
I know that right before the original Great Depression, there was a big run on yellow fever. They had a large outbreak of yellow fever all across thank you, Tater. All across the whole country. Then they had some erratic weather prior to that wrecked a lot of harvests. In 1914, there was a war. And then they had a big locust problem in 15 and 16. And that mimics sort of kind of what we're going through right now. We're having erratic weather. We're having flooding. We're having all kinds of things that kind of like history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. Yeah. And this whole, this whole thing is just, it's kind of foretelling to me. They have, first a disease outbreak and then floods and then pests and not good stuff. Not good stuff.
No. Hello to Enough Said, Linda's Prepper Kitchen and Kentucky. Good to see all of you. Thank you so much. So I thought I wanted to talk about this real briefly, and we're getting near the end, folks. So thank you, everybody, for popping in. If you found this useful at all, please remember to give a thumbs up, and please remember to check out Big's Prep. I did put a link to her channel in the description. I will try to drop another one here before we finish out. But so during 1933, so this was like 4 years into the Great Depression. And at that point, the U.S. was on a gold standard. And for those who may not be aware of what that meant, the dollar was backed by gold. It is not backed by gold anymore. It is backed by the full faith and trust of the U.S. government and a very interesting alliance with oil. And the part of what happened in 1933 is by executive order. This wasn't even a congressional vote. Executive order, I believe it was. They declared private ownership of gold basically illegal with only a few exceptions. Like some numismatic coins were exempt, and you could own a very small amount of gold. Jewel, like wedding bands and things like that, were exempt, I believe. But for the most part, ownership of gold was illegal, and you had 1 month to turn it in. And people did, because there was, if you got caught with it, there was a $10,000 fine. Now you can imagine, and 10 years or 10 years in prison. Now you can imagine $10,000 in 1933. Like that would have killed an entire generation. It's something most families would not have been able to recover from. So a lot of people did turn in their gold. And then what was really kind of scammy about that whole thing is they bought it from people at $20 an ounce or thereabouts. And then immediately the U.S. government arbitrarily decided that gold is now worth $35 an ounce. So they basically doubled their wealth overnight in what was a very unethical confiscation, really, of private ownership of wealth. So why do I bring this up now? Well, could this happen again? There's nothing that says it couldn't happen again. Not likely to happen again, but I think there's some important lessons to be aware of with that. And that's why a lot of people in the gold and silver stacking community will say, you don't own it in your hand, you don't really have it, right? But if you have it in your hand, then a lot of things could happen to it. You could have a boating accident with your silver and gold. You could give it away to homeless people, whatever. There's all kinds of different ways that gold and silver could suddenly go missing. But I think that the idea of wealth confiscation could also happen in other assets. I could absolutely see that happening with cryptocurrencies at some point. If they decided that cryptocurrencies are a threat to the dollar or the digi-dollar or whatever, the Project Hamilton, whatever it is, when they decide to release that. So is it likely to happen? Hey, Die Bullfrog, is it likely to happen? Probably not, but it's just something to think about and maybe be diverse with how you financially prepare. paying down your debt is probably the number one thing that you should do.
Absolutely.
Having some cash savings would be the number two thing you can do. If you've got both of those covered and you want to expand out of that, I would say just be diverse. Don't put everything in one basket. Don't put all your money in Bitcoin. Don't put all your money in silver and gold.
No.
You know?
Some in the mattress, some in a jar in the backyard.
Some in real estate.
Some in, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just kind of have it spread around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a boating accident. Yeah, and it also, as I was rereading that, of course, I knew all that stuff about the gold confiscation. It made me think of other things that could also be confiscated, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
That's what governments do, says Kentucky.
Yeah, they're here to help.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. All right, so if you all want to, let me give you Biggs's channel again. I'm going to drop it right now. Okay, there's Cynthia's channel coming up right now if you all want to check that out. And as we start to wind this one down, Cynthia, is there anything else that you want to add? And you had something important that you wanted to talk about. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So my son is serving in the United States Army, and he is deployed somewhere in Europe right now that's very cold, that I won't mention the name of. However, there is a young man in his unit named Private First Class Chris, and he has no family to write to him. So if you would like to send a letter to a soldier, just a card or support or anything like that, you can message me on Instagram at the Biggs Prep, all squished together one word. You can email me. My email is in my contact information on all my videos. You can, you can reach out to me however you want to, and we'll make sure that we get this young man some support because he is the loader for my son's tank. And that is an important job. And I want him to feel supported by a family. Even if he doesn't have a family, I want us to make him feel like he has a family, a true family who looks out for him and loves him. Because like I told my son, I'm going to cry. Like I told my son, he's part of my family now. Does he not have somewhere to go when he goes on leave? He can come to me now. I'm his mama now. I will take care of him. Yes, I will take care of him. And we're going to make sure that this boy he's a very young man. He's younger than my son. And this is his first time out of the country. And he really needs some support. So I would just love to collect some letters. If you'd like to send him things, I'm sending a box every 2 weeks over to the soldiers. So I would love to pack some things up for him and send him some goodies from people who know that he's there and support him.
And I'll just add another way that we can help Cynthia with this is if you watch her videos or run a playlist. Do you have playlists set up on yours?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So you could run a playlist while you're doing your housework and stuff like that. Just let those ads run. That will help her because she told me before we started that her ad revenue is going towards this as well. Yeah.
All my ad revenue until my son comes home is for the soldiers to send them things and send them boxes and all the good things. So that's minus what the government takes for my taxes. But I want to make sure that these boys feel supported. There's no girls in their platoon. It's all boys, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, sleeping in tents because there's in the host country where they are, there's no base.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for allowing me to have your platform to spread the message that there are people who are deployed, soldiers who are deployed that need some support.
Yeah, well, we talked about this before we went live too, that my family has certainly had that too. My nephew served overseas, and we were one of the ways that we helped to keep his morale up was to send letters and packages and goodies from home and stuff like that. It's so important for keeping their morale going.
Yeah. So right now the soldiers are not allowed to share their APO addresses except for with family because people are sending them like itching powder for their boots and anthrax and all kinds of other horrible things. And the country that he's in right now has very restrictive policies on what you can mail and what you can't. Yeah. So Mama's taking care of him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if you all in my audience, if you caught that, please help out. And we gave you a couple different ways you can do that. So I really appreciate it. And it doesn't cost you. Remember, it doesn't cost you anything to just run a Cynthia's playlist while you're doing some housework. So
yeah, that's the biggest thing. Thank you so much.
Of course. And any videos? So tomorrow night you're going live.
Tomorrow night I'll be live talking about 8% inflation is a lie.
Yeah. What time are you going on?
8 o'clock Eastern.
Okay. And any other videos you got coming up next week?
Next week. Sorry, y'all. Surprise question. Next week, we're going to talk. I'll do a wrap up of my live on Sunday. Monday, we're going to talk about everyone's going to lose. It's up to you how much. Over on my kitchen channel, I have a couple of videos coming up. I'm going to do egg replacer. I'm going to try the aquafaba as an egg replacer and also chia seeds to make some banana muffins. Pantry challenge update, and then a Walmart video. So yeah, I got all kinds of stuff coming up.
I'll check that out too, Kentucky. Appreciate that. Now, I want to give one more shout out here too. Bear with me, everybody, just a second. All right. It's coming. All right. So this link here that I'm dropping is for Bacon. Bacon's been a moderator for my channel for, about 2 years now. Really appreciate him. He always does an awesome job. We don't get too rowdy here on Prepping with Sarge, but if we have to, he's the bouncer. And always drops links for people, helps me out in a lot of ways. So please check out Bacon. He usually goes live later on Friday nights and has a great time. I would encourage you to go join in the chat. They talk about all kinds of stuff. Just, bring a drink, bring a sense of humor, and you will have a good time. And I think that's it, unless you have anything else.
That's it. No, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Sarge, for hosting. This was great.
It's been my pleasure. I appreciate it. Maybe we'll do another one if you want me to come on over there. We can talk about mental health or whatever, foraging, whatever you want to talk about.
Love it.
All right. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Really appreciate everybody. I always end with a little bit of a positive message. So let's go with tonight. Make sure that you practice a little bit of gratitude. Think about the generations before us that didn't have all that tap of dopamine at their discretion, and they had to be creative, and they had to be more resilient, and they had to learn to use things more efficiently than we do currently. So let's have some gratitude for things are a lot easier than they were for past generations. Make sure you call your loved ones, call your mom and dad if they're alive, tell them that you love them, that you appreciate them. Make sure you're giving some forgiveness to somebody out there. Life is too short to be carrying a grudge, especially if it's not something big. If it's something small and you just got this grudge, it's not worth it. Call them up, tell them you forgive them. Doesn't mean you have to let them back in your life, but you're going to feel better and they're going to feel better, and it'll be better for you. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.
Bye-bye.